The Texas Gulf Coast is characterized by 3,359 miles of coastline, barrier islands, sand dunes, bays, and estuaries, a biologically diverse area of over 300 species of birds, including 19 endangered species. White-tailed deer, 4 species of sea turtle, 175 species of fish, whales, sharks, alligators, and dolphin. Texas National Wildlife Refuges, parks, and marine sanctuaries attract vacationers, beachcombers, bird watchers, fishermen, and scuba divers from around the world. There are 16 special habitats in and around the Texas Gulf, which have special ecological significance. These habitats are managed by federal and state conservation initiatives, such as the EPA's Gulf Coast Program, the Texas Parks and Wildlife GEMS Program, and NOAA's National Marine Sanctuary Program. Today, we will take you on an adventure that only a few scuba divers and researchers have been able to enjoy, to the Flower Gardens Banks National Marine Sanctuary. Located 110 miles into the Gulf, south of the Texas-Louisiana border, the Flower Gardens Banks are the most pristine coral reefs in the United States. The best access to this part of the Gulf is from Freeport, Texas. Located southwest of Houston, where the Brazos River meets the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico, Freeport is a modern port for shipping, berthing area for offshore oil platforms, and market for commercial shrimpers. The Gulf's finest fleet of dedicated live-aboard ships docks here. The MV Spree and the MV Fling are customized for Gulf diving. These full-service 100-foot, 3-level air-conditioned ships carry 34 divers and a crew of 6 on multi-day trips to the Flower Gardens Banks. Both ships are equipped with triple-screw diesels, which provide a comfortable 18-knot cruise speed during the 6-hour trip to the Flower Gardens Banks. Today, the MV Spree and the MV Fling will carry full crews on a 5-day trip to explore the reefs during the annual coral spawning. Our first dive site will be at Oil Platform 389, just a few miles outside the reef. Our destination today is Mobil's Oil Platform A389, one of the 4,000 oil platforms that dot the Gulf of Mexico's northern slopes. The oil industry is intensely developing this region of the Gulf. Offshore oil and gas production here accounts for approximately 90% of America's offshore production. The petroleum industry protects the marine environment in every part of its operation here. From exploration to production, the industry has a solid record of achievement. State and federal government agencies regulate the onshore and offshore oil industry, requiring them to operate in an environmentally sensitive way. The industry generally goes well beyond government regulations by developing environmentally safe standards, training, and certification programs that help the industry protect the waters in the Gulf of Mexico. Mobile Platform A389 is an example of the industry's recognition of environmental impact to the sensitive coral formations and other marine organisms in the Gulf. Mobile ceased operations on Platform A389 when it was discovered that sediments from its operation could be carried onto the nearby coral formations, having a disastrous effect on the health of these sensitive coral reefs. Today, Platform A389 sits inactive, while debate continues concerning its future. We're ready to enter the water. Follow me as we dive into the lower structure of this platform. NOAA designated the Flower Gardens Banks as a National Marine Sanctuary on January 17, 1992. 3 sites are included in this protected area: the East, West, and Stetson's Banks. The East Bank is 19.2 square nautical miles and is located at 27 degrees 54 minutes north longitude, 93 degrees 35 minutes west latitude. The West Bank is 22.5 square nautical miles and is located 10 nautical miles to the west. Stetson's Bank was added to the Marine Sanctuary in 1998. Located at 28 degrees 9 minutes north longitude, 94 degrees 17 minutes west latitude. Its area covers approximately 1.3 square nautical miles. One of 12 national marine sanctuaries in the U.S., the Flower Gardens is a pristine coral reef that has shown little damage from human interventions. In 1997, the USGS Sea Floor Mapping Project conducted a series of test surveys in the Flower Gardens banks, with results which have shown the Flower Gardens in stunning detail. High-resolution multi-beam side-scan sonar systems were used to compile shaded relief images showing 20 square miles of the East, West, and Stetson's banks. These maps show the East and West banks at depths between 65 and 460 feet. These sediment and coral-encrusted salt domes push up from 460 feet to within 65 feet of the surface. Biologically, the banks are divided into distinct zones, with discrete living conditions and assemblages of sea life. At 65 feet, we are at the top of the reef. From this level down to 120 feet is highly diverse with coral, fish, invertebrates, sponge, and algae found throughout the area. The vast majority of the 253 species of reef invertebrates and 175 species of fish are found in this zone. This zone is also most accessible to the divers and researchers. The next zone is somewhat deeper and out of range for most divers. From 125 to 140 feet, fish populations are less diverse. Mounting corals are particularly sparse. Large concentrations of small branching coral are found on the edges of the main reef. Peripheral areas of the reef are almost totally covered with seaweed, forming a leafy algae zone. At 120 to 170 feet is the comparatively low diversity coral reef zone. Among the 12 varieties of reef-building corals here, 8 varieties are particularly abundant: the blushing coral, fire coral, carnivorous star coral, large grooved brain coral, lettuce coral, and coralline algae are the predominant encrusting forms occupying dead reef rock. Exceptional numbers of America thorny oysters have been observed in the areas of the brine water seeps. Between 150 to 270 feet, the algal sponge zone is next on the way down the bank. Coralline algae, which produce spherical nodules, are the dominant living organisms here. Fish-size algal nodules cover up to 80% of the bottom in places. A variety of sponge species are abundant in the algal sponge zone, with the stinging touch-me-not sponge being the most distinctive. A number of asteroid starfish, sea urchins, and sea hares have been observed in this zone. From 270 to 300 feet is a deep transition zone. In this zone, organisms start to exhibit traits found in species that are geared to live in a world without light. The unusual spring-shaped sea whips occur here. They mark the transition zone between organisms that exhibit distinct shallow water traits and those that are geared to live in deep water. The next zone is most inhospitable to most of the Gulf's organisms. Between 300 and 390 feet, light penetration, water turbidity, sedimentation, and temperature are the most important factors controlling the present distribution of reef-building corals and algae here. This is the home of the drowned reefs. Drowned reefs are the remains of coral reefs that were once thriving during periods of lower sea level, when a majority of the Earth's water was locked up in glacial ice packs and the sea level was at its lowest, probably about 17,000 years ago. These ancient reefs now attract a number of fish species, particularly the small yellowtail reef fish, red snapper, Spanish flagfish, snowy grouper, bank butterfly, scorpion fish, and the rough-tongued bass. Sea crinoids, sea whips, sea fans, sponges, and non-reef-building corals are the most prevalent organisms. From 390 to 460 feet, we're at the maximum levels of the East Bank. Now below the deep transition zone, the nature of the bottom abruptly changes at the edge of the bank, shifting from algal nodules to a soft bottom of mixed coarse sand and fine sediments. Organic materials rain down from the upper levels as the water temperature continues to drop. Another unique geologic formation at the Flower Gardens is an unusual underwater salt lake, fed by a brine underwater seep. The brine seep is located at 233 feet below the surface on the margin of the East Flower Gardens bank. The lake is about 80 feet in diameter and only about 10 inches deep. Water from the brine seep flows over a waterfall and down the canyon, which extends roughly 200 feet to the edge of the bank. A mixing stream dilutes the water, adds oxygen, and diminishes the toxic levels of the hydrogen sulfide. Living conditions for most marine organisms are not good here, since the lake's high salt content, high levels of hydrogen sulfide, dissolved hydrocarbon gases, and lack of oxygen are poisonous. The dominant organisms in the brine lake are sulfide oxidizing bacteria that live on a very thin interface that separates the dense brine lake from the normal seawater above. Another interesting feature is a whitish mat made of bacteria and algae that covers the floor of the canyon and appears to thrive on the unique environment of the mixing stream, where both oxygen and hydrogen sulfide are present. A specialized community of organisms are able to live in the sulfide-rich canyon stream and feed directly on the plant and bacteria growing there. Fish and other animals generally cannot tolerate the sulfide in the canyon brine stream. But some fish, such as the angelfish, butterfly fish, and cottonwick, are able to swim in and out of the brine stream to feed. Large red snapper and grouper often swim very close and even dive into the full-strength brine lake. We have arrived at the Flower Gardens banks, where we will join up with the research vessel, the MV Spree, for a 5-day exploration of the East, West, and Stetson's banks during the annual coral spawning. As the sun draws near to the horizon, the stony corals of the flower gardens prepare for their annual mass spawning. Somehow timed to coincide with the phase of the moon, the coral polyps release their bundles of eggs and sperm, beginning on the 8th night after the August full moon. These tiny animals are spread over a 300-acre area of the East and West Flower Gardens reefs, as well as along the Florida coast, the Grand Bahamas, and throughout the Caribbean Sea. Somehow, every coral in the northern hemisphere knows this is the time to spawn. This colony of female brain coral is just releasing its eggs, which will drift with the current, eventually finding their way to the sperm of male brain coral, which is also drifting with the current. Some species are hermaphroditic, releasing their bundles of eggs and sperm together, while other species release bundles of eggs and sperm separately. The thousands of eggs released by this brain coral will drift to the surface, where they will accumulate with millions of other eggs from other colonies. The tiny bundles will break up at the surface, where they will be fertilized by the sperm from another colony. Drifting for days, the emerging coral polyps may settle to the bottom, where adequate sunlight, warm water temperatures, and a rigid surface for attaching will allow the polyps to colonize and flourish, possibly the beginnings of a new reef. Within minutes after spawning, the water is clouded with packets of eggs and sperm. The surface has become milky, followed by a pungent odor, which will soon clear up as the newly fertilized eggs drift away with the current, only to become heavy again with a spawn from another species. Every colony is made up of thousands of individual coral polyps, each taking its turn to ensure the survival of its species. Coral polyps living in colonies also act as one organism. Beneath their hard calcium carbonate skeletons, their gelatinous cup-shaped bodies become interlocked as they grow. This highly evolved communal relationship allows every polyp the ability to signal the adjoining polyp. When spawning occurs, the entire colony is signaled to release its bundle of eggs. Surprisingly, fish do not feed on the eggs. Even though an abundance of eggs is released every year, the fish living around the reef have not developed a taste for the tiny morsels. However, the camera did catch this brittle starfish seemingly scooping up armloads of eggs just before making a quick dash out of the camera's lights. Highly elusive, brittle starfish are seldom seen sitting on top of coral formations. Brittle starfish also spawn during this time, crawling up on top of mounds of coral, just as this one has done. They stand up on all 5 legs, casting a stream of bright red eggs adrift into the water.